And welcome back, everybody, to the Rainbow Pitch League. We are now in the, how do I put this? The playoff for the third and fourth position. And today we are joined by Rhea. Welcome, Rhea.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me, Kiki.
Thank you very much. And as per usual for this top 8 event, we are sponsored today by Legend Story Studios, Fabrary, TCG TED, Premier Card Grading, Metal Fab Tokens, The Realm Games, Fresh and Buds, and Melody. So it looks like we're starting off with an Ice Eternal for Iyslander. Now, you're a fairly noted Iyslander player at this point. How does a play like this kind of make you feel to start the game?
So this is really interesting. It's one of the best turn zero plays Iyslander has because without letting our opponent filter, it looks like we are fusing here. So there is Arcane going at Tessa,
Mm-hmm.
but lets us start by taxing our opponent on turn zero. And there's not really anything they can do about it. Don't have an
Yeah.
arsenal. Very effective use of frostbites.
Mm-hmm.
It is interesting here to see the Dorinthea has Arcane Barrier 2.
Yes.
So can sort of threaten to fatigue if the game goes especially long, but critically not that Arcane Barrier 3. So all of the Icelanders, Blue Ice Veins, and Waning Moon guaranteed to leak at least a little bit of damage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I did notice that as well. It is pretty important. And I don't know if that's a consideration to how many blues Aria may have or something. But here we're going to see a Dawnblade pitching 4 resources to attack with it to get around those frostbites. Um, and we're going to see the. I can't remember the name of this. I spoke about it yesterday, literally. Ether Hail?
Blue Aether Hail, yeah.
Yes, I got the
Played
name
from
right. Cool.
Arsenal. That is so many Heart of Findles on the board right now for Amelia.
She's got heart. She's got heart. um, yes, so we're getting the frostbite kind of mid combat, and that's going to affect Arya's resources here potentially. Once again, having 2 cards in hand, uh, choosing not to use a reaction at this point, at least.
Yeah, so notably, this was probably done in the layer step before the Dawnblade becomes attacking, which means that the Frostbite is treated before the Dorinthea player, before Aria, has an opportunity to play any reactions in response.
Oh, true.
Um,
Okay,
One of
that makes.
Iyslander's bread and butter tricks right there, especially against these reaction speed decks.
I'm so glad I've got you here to explain this.
We see an Arsenal and pass from Aria, it looks like. This makes a lot of sense. Dorinthea really benefits from kind of setting up 5 card hands and really going over the top of the disruption Iyslander can offer in this matchup. We
Yes.
do see an Insidious Chill coming down here, which is very big for Amelia. Getting one out this early in the game when you still have a nice life cushion, some breathing room, is a very big deal for the late game.
Mm-hmm. There was a brief moment my screen just went off there, so I couldn't quite see what was happening. Um, cool. And are we back in Arya's turn? Yep, looks like we're just doing a little bit
Yeah,
of thinking here. And here we're seeing Steel Blade Supremacy. So,
always a good way to start a Dorinthea turn.
although pitching a red is not the way you want to start this turn, and we don't have a Courage on the other side. So we're going to get taxed quite heavily if we want to try to have a turn here. And here's a second Insidious Chill.
This is a big deal. Future Aether Ice Veins taking 2 cards from hand means that uh, Amelia will have a relatively easy time pushing damage later on in the game, although it is quite a tempo negative play to play a chill on your opponent's turn, spending 2 cards essentially just for 1 Frostbite of Disruption now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this Dawnblade swing, not a lot of resources in hand, but threatening to draw a card on hit. Very demanding in terms of blocks here.
Yes. So there's going to be 5 cards, and you have to almost assume that Arya has maybe the Iron Song response here, just to kind of make this Dawnblade worth it. Um, but of course, it could just be a kind of play to try to get some tempo back, maybe. But nope, there we are. There's Iron Song response. Just trying
Called
to.
it exactly.
I kind of felt like the only way that play made sense there.
Hmm.
So we're trying to hope we can to maybe draw a blue resource here. We're thinking about this refraction bolters potentially. Try to get a second swing in for 5, which is almost guaranteed to hit.
I think that makes a lot of sense with Amelia only at a single card in hand.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially demanding the coronet peak block if we don't want a counter on Dawnblade this turn.
Yeah,
It's a
no, for
very
sure.
tough decision. Denying counters very important in the matchup, in every matchup, obviously. But Coronet
Yeah.
Peak is kind of a very vital resource for Iyslander. Looks like uh, valuing keeping armor over the first on blade counter, at least at this stage in the game, I think makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very curious if there's a Coronet Peak here or just a pass to Arsenal.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it's a blue fuse card, you could probably arsenal that and then just try to rip cards out of Aria's hand to kind of prevent her from retaining this counter just by removing the resources she has available to her.
Absolutely.
And it looks like that may be the go. We did get the arsenal there. We've drawn up to 5 cards for both players, and we're heading into Aria's turn with both tunics on 3. Contemplating the pitch really quick here. What kind of turn are you like worried about here if you're in the Iyslander's position? Uh, Perhaps this is the one to be concerned about. This is a glistening quicksilver. I've always forgotten the name of this card, but this one gives go again. And if this sword hits, it's going to get a +1 counter. So it's a really good way to kind of force the blocks as such. This already has the counter on it, so it does 4 damage as Aria is showing with the dice. And that counter already proving to be fairly frustrating, getting over that break point. And it's kind of why it's so crucial and what makes Dorinthea so effective despite having few to none 0 attacks. Amelia hasn't immediately reached for that arsenal either, once again. So maybe we're not getting a frostbite right now, or even the insidious triggers, but we are just going to try to block it out.
Mm. There is there's a reasonable world where this arsenal is a red card, either a fighting spirit or an ice, something to that degree. 2 card block here, blocking 6, and is that a blue overpower going over the
That is a
top?
blue overpower. So we're heading up to 8. This sword is going to hit and it's going to deal 2 damage. She doesn't have any resources at the moment available, but she does have the tunic if she chooses to use it. And there we go. So now the sword has 2 counters on it, which is going to be pretty rough. And we are attacking for 5 now. And if this hits, it's going to get another counter.
2 additional counters, right? One from
2?
glistening, one from hitting twice in the same turn.
2 counters, correct. One from Dorinthia's effect as well, yes. Dorinthia's effect, its own effect, rather. Um, Yeah, no, you're right. This sword's going to go up to 7 if this hits. You really can't afford to let this hit if you're Amelia. So this is. Unless, of course, you are going to go for the Insidious play next turn, which it looks like that may be the case. We have a
So
7-power Dawnblade.
surely there's some kind of ice fusion card in arsenal here then.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Taking 3 cards with the 2 chills and maybe an ice vein seems like a reasonable way to
Yeah.
stabilize this board state.
And Ice Vein would completely destroy Arya's hand. And that might be the play we're going for. There we are. And it's the red
There it
Ether Ice Vein.
is.
And there's the fuse.
Fusing with an ice bolt with tunic up. Excellent way to push damage on the next turn, although I imagine a lot of cards will be spent blocking the Dawnblade swing.
Mm-hmm. Perhaps there's 2. 2 cards blocking. But yeah, you can almost get away with that if Arya only has 1 card in hand, which she'll have to use to attack with the Dawnblade.
Mm-hmm. Now, Arya does have a considerable life lead here. If she has 2 blues in hand, we may see her only lose 2 cards.
Mm-hmm.
It's like instead discarding 2 reds to the chills.
Yep.
Okay. A
And
third
we're
card will have to be paid into this ice vein. Yep. So single card hand for Aria, still going to threaten 7 damage on her turn. It's very respectable.
Yeah, those counters came at the right time. So we're getting 7 damage. And it looks like there's no tricks, no shenanigans, but there could always be the Iron Song response once again. So let's see kind of
Yes.
if Amelia respects
So,
that reaction. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So Arya has pitched a red here,
Mm-hmm.
and Tunic is not up. So if Amelia creates a frostbite in the layer step, which is exactly what we see here,
Yeah.
Arya is locked out of any sort of ways to pump this Dawnblade after blocks are declared. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we're seeing the classic pitch a blue to Tunic Moon there, allows Amelia to get 6 damage value out of that single Ice Bolt from Arsenal. Just
Mm-hmm.
really efficient arcane instant speed playline. But this Dawnblade is about to demand some blocks. I'm very curious to see which cards go in front of it.
With 3 cards in hand and this sword being for 7, is there like a chance that you block with the tunic here? Like it's quite early on in the game, I have to assume, but that would be 7. No, we're getting the Coronet Peak.
Instead,
So
Coronet. Yeah. Um, Giving an equipment here makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
Keeping a card to Arsenal is obviously very powerful. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's always hard to say if Tunic or Coronet is more valuable.
Mm-hmm.
I think holding the Tunic, especially when you need to push so much damage for the rest of the game, is a very reasonable decision.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I was just wondering if the 2 block value kind of you lose a point of life here, or lose a point of defending value by blocking the Coronet Peak, but overall the extra resources kind of acts like an extra card in hand almost if you just need that one more resource with that. Or as we saw there was 6 damage off a single
Mhm.
card because of the tunic.
Yeah, very easy in Iyslander to convert that Tunic resource to a whopping 3 damage at instant speed.
But hey, that's what those are the tools she's got to work with. And here we're coming in just with the Dawnblade, but with a suspicious amount of cards in hand to kind of, you know, make you think twice about how big this Dawnblade is going to be.
Yeah, this is very interesting because we see the last copy of Glistening Steelblade pitched
Mm-hmm.
here. Without bolters up, Amelia declaring no blocks, which means that this Glint the Quicksilver's reprise is not online. There is no card drawn. It's a card for go again.
Mm-hmm. So that's just a fairly hefty cost. You pitched your yellow to play blue for functionally the same kind of effect to go again in this case. I suppose Aria was kind of hopeful for the blocks there, but we're still going to get a second Dawnblade threat here. It will require a pitch, though. 2 pitches, even. Attacking for 3. All these Frostbites are kind of really slowing down this Dorinthea deck. Like, we've seen the power cards from Aria, but she's just having to use so many cards just to pitch or to discard, just to try to have a turn. And as you all know, like, Dorinthea is a hero that really loves having, like, a bigger hand available to her to apply this sort of,
Mm-hmm.
like, snowballing sort of pressure almost. But we're just not seeing that to the same extent that we've seen in, say, like, even against Lexi, who can occasionally make frostbites. Um, it's just not coming up to the same sort of effect, I guess, like the same sort of power levels. But we're uh, this Iyslander deck is so efficient. How it can pitch blues and still make use of that third resource in so many different ways. We're seeing the Gauntlet block there,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but
getting five value off of that blue pitch there. Now,
yeah,
notably, the Dawnblade did hit twice that turn,
mm-hmm.
once for 3, once for 1. So there is a counter here, but there's another Aether Ice Vein.
And we're seeing 3 more cards being removed from Aria's hand potentially, 2 to 3 at the very least, and it's gonna leave her with choices. And like, I don't know if she's going to consistently be able to have all these blues. Like, I don't know if Dorinthea really expects to see more than 2 blues in a hand. So, and you need the one of them at least to have resources for your turn. So there's a yellow being pitched to the effects of the Insidious Chills, and then we're preventing one arcane damage and paying for the Ice Vein effect as well. And there we go. So that was a pretty resource heavy turn for Aria in terms of defending. So we have 2 resources available to her now with an arsenal and 4 damage coming through.
We know from the Iyslander side that that's a blue frosting in Arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
Not the most threatening when our opponent has 2 spare resources, but what Amelia can do here is play that during the layer step, see
Mm-hmm.
if Aria prevents the damage. She does. So if there is a reaction here, it probably is a 0 cost, which helps inform Amelia about how to block this turn, because there is, of course, that pesky frostbite that one leftover resource needs to be paid for.
Yeah. So if Aria wasn't to pay there, it would be easier to suggest that there is a reaction because there's a significant more amount of 1 cost ones than 0 cost ones.
Exactly, yeah.
Cool. Looks like a 2-card block. So I'm not expecting that Iron Song response on this turn. We're just contemplating which 2 cards we're giving away here.
Cold Snap and
Scalding.
Emeritus. Yeah, both prime Arsenal targets, so Amelia's
Mm-hmm.
hand must be quite good.
We're even pitching an Emeritus here to get in that 3 damage. But the life
Mhm.
totals are slowly coming back to a kind of even favor here. And
Yes,
exactly even.
the dangerous thing about being even with a wizard, though, is that they have Storm Striders and Dorinthea does not.
Mm-hmm.
So while this game looks close, there are 2 chills on the board, and I'm concerned for our warrior aficionado here.
Yeah, so the life totals are even. We have to remember that Iyslander starts with a bit of a disadvantage when it comes to the life total in the first place.
Hmm.
Um, and like you're mentioning, wizards do have the ability to kind of come out of nowhere with all this damage because of the Storm Striders and Waning Moon. There's almost like a combo-esque sort of path to victory at the end of it. But here we're seeing a channel Lake Frigid. Amelia noted this is her favorite card in the deck, and it's going to be super powerful here, functionally being a frostbite on each reaction that we see for the remainder of this turn at the very least. It is a little bit harder to kind of keep it up for a following turn without the coronet peak. Um,
Yes, the Coronet Peak being drawn is a big deal here. The most common line is to just pitch an Ice Blue at it on the turn after you play the Channel Lake Frigid.
mhm,
Very curious to see if Amelia is willing to eat damage this turn to hold cards and play something on the next turn,
mhm.
or if we're just going to abandon this CLF after a turn cycle and still, even if it's just for this turn, stopping Dorinthea from having a huge 5 card hand for a turn cycle is a big deal.
Yeah, like your whole game plan as this Iyslander appears to just be kind of slowing down what your opponent does and kind of, like we said, kind of keeping the life totals even, or at least keeping up with the tempo a little bit
Mhm.
till you can reach this sort of end game plan. And yeah, we're not seeing any blocks here. That's just 6 damage. Um, Happy to just waiting mode. Once again, seeing that extra resource from that tunic being crucial to having an efficient play, and Amelia does get to keep multiple cards in hand here. So we might see that ice card getting pitched to keep the Channel Lake Frigid around for one more turn.
This has been a very interesting game so far because we've seen Fiandel's Fighting Spirits being blocked with, I believe, but I don't know that Amelia has actually played an attack action yet. I wonder if we'll see one this turn.
That would be a great play. She does have 3 cards in hand, so the availability to play Fighting Spirit for 7, gaining a life, and Orcbot and Conquer. And we're
Pitching the
seeing a
Blizzard,
Blizzard.
so Channel Light Frigid will live for a turn.
Mm-hmm. Blizzard being a super interesting card in this matchup as well. Like, it does cost you the opportunity to block, but removing that go again does stop the Dawnblade from guaranteeing a second counter almost.
Mhm.
Um, but it doesn't block.
Yeah. This command encounter is also extremely threatening here, right? So,
Hmm.
um, threatening to destroy the arsenal card, and typically you arsenal very good cards, so that's probably not something that Aria wants. But if she
No.
wants to, but if she wants to keep that arsenal card, she's going to need to block with 2 cards from hand, and
Hmm.
there's a channel like Frigid out, which means that her resources available to fight through disruption would be significantly reduced. Um,
Yeah. This Command and Conquer is functionally, yeah, like you said, reducing her ability to kind of play this next turn, whether she's losing cards in hand, losing cards in arsenal. And because this is a wizard she's playing against, there's very few blocking equipment. We've already seen one of the blocking equipment go away without even being used to defend. So we are just happy to. Oh,
oh, never something you want to see.
Command and Conquer hitting a defense reaction is always a good feeling for the offensive player, never the other way around. And we're going to try to fight through this by playing a. I've forgotten the name again, I'm sorry.
Steelblade
But
Supremacy. It
there
is
we
the
go.
last copy because we've seen one played and one pitched so far this
Hmm.
stream.
Yep.
Um, Resource floating. Now it's very interesting because with Refraction Bolters drawn and no other cards in hand, there's no go again on this Dawnblade swing.
Yeah.
But Arya is threatening to essentially draw a free arsenal for next turn cycle if
Yeah.
this Dawnblade is to hit.
Yeah, so we're not seeing a combo kind of with this second and potentially
Mm-hmm.
last supremacy here. This is purely just to try to buy back some of the tempo that was lost with that Command and Conquer. And we are going to get 2 cards from this, which is going to make it a lot. We're thinking about getting 2 cards from this. But yeah, so this would kind of. This play might warrant enough respect that we might lose the channel like Frigid here. Now, of course, the top of the deck isn't known by Aria at this point, so Amelia might be thinking, I can let you take this damage. I mean, I can take this damage, let you take the arsenal, and take a random shot at that, and I'm going to keep this channel like Frigid for another turn, just to kind of stop you from doing anything. Going down 2 5 life points could be risky, purely
Oh, yeah.
because the swords will be coming in for lethal, and you're going to have to start
Mhm.
overblocking fairly soon if you get much lower.
So we're going into Amelia's turn with Iyslander having a 5 card hand. That's a very rare occurrence. I wonder if there is a star for a star involved here, or
Hmm.
Winter's Bites. I'm curious to see how this
There
turn
we
goes
go.
wide enough
That's card for his
to
card, just like you called it.
use all 5 of those cards. It seems like star is the answer. Um,
Hmm.
Always an excellent card. Uh, Being able to go wide in Iyslander is a crucial piece of the puzzle to use these 5 card hands when you do get them.
Hmm. We could arguably see a second one as well, potentially. Like, Amelia's low enough that this card is not going to actually take her life total above Aria's.
Hmm.
So maybe that's why she was happy to take the 5 damage there, potentially. I don't know how many we've
For
seen yet.
sure, one of the general tenets of a good wizard player is you're always happy to walk down in life at the same speed as your opponent. Taking damage to deal damage is usually a favorable trade, which is exactly what we've seen on this turn cycle.
Hmm. And that's due to the Storm Striders, correct? Like, because at some point,
Exactly.
you're just going
Hmm.
to out damage them. And you only need to do that for one turn. So Arya in the confusing position here of having to actually block with cards rather than pitching them. Um, but on the plus side for Arya, a lot of the warrior cards, if not all of the ones available to her, block for 3 rather than pitching and preventing 1 arcane damage.
Hmm.
And here we're seeing a sink below. So this card only blocks physical damage here. Um, and it's going to stop.
Unfortunately, because of the channel like Frigid, there's sync blows having to be paid for.
Hmm.
Now, normally that would be especially brutal versus physically oriented heroes, but because this is a wizard, there's a chance those 2 floating resources can protect against arcane damage this turn cycle.
Hmm.
Looks like the follow up is a Frost Hex, very interesting, as well as the Waning Moon.
Yeah, I suspect the waiting moon's being activated, even though the damage can be prevented, like it's on board, but purely to get that second ice card into the pitch zone to keep the channel like frigid alive.
Excellent point. Yes, not only keeping Channel Lake alive, but also digging another card deeper in the deck to look for the next threat.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
That's great.
really, really, really clever use from Amelia to keep that Channel Lake alive this turn.
Yeah, I like it a lot. And we're getting a card arsenal. I don't believe I know what that card is. Um, so it could be some sort of frostbite disruption here. Um, just cheekily checking that that Aria is going to pay the 2 there.
Mhm.
There's no harm in flinging that moon there, just to kind of see what happens. But crucially, like we mentioned, the Channel Lake Frigid is around for another turn, and Aria does have 4 cards available to her. She did sink one of them away last turn, so almost like a functional 5 in terms of card selection at the very least. But here we're getting 3 damage, and the most we can kind of expect to see is 1 reaction here. Because we will have to pitch regardless whatever reaction it is, so there's only going to be 1 card left in Arya's hand. And here we're seeing an ice card coming out of Arsenal, giving another frostbite.
Polar
This is the
Blast, especially
dominate
useful
one.
here because it draws a card. Yes,
Yeah.
so the dominating attack on your opponent's turn not exactly useful, but it turns out make a frostbite draw card is plenty playable without any extra text.
Hmm. And pitching in blue, leaving Amelia with enough resources to come back with the moon as well, potentially, and depending on how the blocks go here. But we do have 4 cards here, and there is a sink below, defending for 4. This could be risky. I do kind of expect a reaction here, so maybe this suggests that Amelia has another defense reaction in hand.
She may just be trying to conserve life. 12 is the magic number for Iyslander to start threatening lethal damage.
Hmm.
Obviously, not this turn because it wasn't an emeritus holding an arsenal. I think we've seen 2 of those pitched. There should be a third one floating around somewhere.
Yeah.
Um, Curious to see. Looks like damage not prevented here, so maybe there is a reaction. Or are they thinking?
They might be thinking the life totals haven't changed yet.
Mhm.
2 cards in hand does make this a little bit difficult to kind of. Hmm. It's hard to know sometimes which point in the game we're in without the players' audio themselves.
Mhm.
Um, so we're
Pitching a
getting.
Fate Foreseen to Arcane Barrier. 2 damage taken.
Hmm.
Oh, and because the Frostbite was unbroken, the Frost Hex, which was played last turn, actually is threatening a point of Arcane.
Mm. It's also I normally expect to see the Frost Hex actually dealing damage in the first turn cycle.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's just so much taxation going on the other side with the insidious chills that have somehow only triggered twice so
I
far.
have a
But
feeling. There we go.
and yeah.
Getting all 3 uses out of those chills, the full value of the cards.
Hmm.
Aria needs uh, 2 blues in hand, or else she's losing 3 cards this turn cycle to these 2 chills and an Aether Ice Vein.
Yeah, I
Um,
didn't catch what color the Ice Vein was. But if it's a red, that's backbreaking. There's just so much damage to come out of this. So there's the 2 discards, 2 red cards.
Now,
If
it
you're,
is noticeable. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you're Arya, you have to be feeling the pressure at this point.
Yes, this is a scary situation to be in. It is notable that Polar Blast is the last card in hand. That card by itself does not deal arcane damage.
Hmm.
So unless Stormstriders is popped next turn, Arya is looking at a max of 3 damage.
Hmm.
Um, Seems like there was a.
Waning Moon as well. No,
I
Waning Moon's
believe that was
bad.
a yellow card pitched, so
Yeah.
maybe it was just take the full 4 from a yellow Ice Vein.
Yes, I believe so. So here we're just showing one resource. Now, yeah, essentially any sort of 3 damage spell is lethal at this point with the Waning Moon.
Start with the Polar Blast.
Hmm.
Insidious Chill pitched also does not deal arcane. Probably just fishing for a way to kill. Amelia
Yeah.
does have to be careful to not overextend this turn. If
Hmm.
Aria has an Oasis Respite in Arsenal, for example, this Dawnblade is still, a very real threat when the wizard is at 5 life.
Yes. We're not going to see any sort of resources available to get any more damage than that if that's an Oasis. But
Well,
we're
here's the
getting
most
an
exciting
Aether
part
Ice
of the
Vein.
game. Storm Striders looks like a red Aether Ice Vein.
Hmm. Not even getting the fuse, but it's not super necessary at this point. We're just presenting lethal damage. So, yeah, thank you everyone for joining us for the third, fourth position game. Congratulations to Amelia for taking out the third position in our Rainbow Pitch League. And thank you, Rhea, for taking some time out of your day to join us for this game. It was really lovely to have you.
Absolutely, I had a blast.